So, hello, my name's Stuart Langridge. I'm here to talk about how privacy could be the next big thing. Emphasis on the could. This is not lawyers. Who here thinks that the amount of data that's collected about you is a bit much? Hands? You're my people. Who here thinks the data that's collected about you is used for purposes which are a bit creepy? Everyone in the room. In 2012, Target, who are a big American discount store, I believe they're originally a French firm called Target, but now they're Target. All the Americans get it. They put together a list of 25 products where, when you purchased them together, the assumption was that you were a woman and you were pregnant. And then they sent out a bunch of coupons to these prospective mothers for baby products. And one of them's father stormed into his local Target, demanded to see the manager. It's like, my daughter got this in the mail and she's still in high school. And you're sending her coupons for baby clothes and for cot style. Are you trying to encourage her to get pregnant? And then he was terribly apologetic 2 days later when it turned out that she was pregnant. Just hadn't told him. Google have got a chat app. Well, Google have got 400 chat apps, but they've got one chat app called Allo, which has the Google Assistant as part of your conversations. So if you're talking about something, you're talking about a local bar or something, it will helpfully show you a map to it or directions or something, quite handy. But it will also include in that information that it knows about you. So if you're talking about a location where it's on one of your personal maps, it might inject that location into your conversation with your friend, or things from your personal searches. Now, some of this is apparently a bug and it's been fixed, so I don't want to hammer Google on this too hard. But it's still, kind of worrying, creepy, right? Women are less likely to be shown ads for high-paying jobs. If your social media friends have got bad credit ratings, it might be harder for you to get a loan. Uber, you knew Uber were going to come up in this, right? The Lord High Chancellors of this sort of thing. Uber have tracked drivers who attended taxi protests and then fired them. They had an internal app called GodView, which tracked you after you got out of their car. They identified what they called rides of glory, which were people coming home after a one-night stand, and then wrote a blog post about it. They retracted that one. But how far do you have to be when even Uber realises you're being too creepy? Because this sort of thing it's really, really creepy. Isn't it great to live in the 21st century where deleting history has become more important than making it? There used to be a saying, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. This has basically been not the truth, right? It's always been various levels of untruth. Sometimes you pay for the product and you are the product. And if you're not paying, that does not necessarily mean that you've signed up to be exploited in every possible way the company can think of. There's no correlation between how much money users pay and how well they're treated. But when people said, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, and me included here, I said, great, because I'm not going to pay for this thing. So if you're going to, I'm okay with being the product. If you're going to show me ads, might as well be ads for stuff I'm going to buy, right? Rather than irrelevant things. If you may as well use my data. If you're going to customize things to my personal taste, then it's customized to my personal taste. That's great, surely. I mean, think about television ads, right? Back in the days when everyone watched television. TV ads, not customised to my viewpoint. Sometimes they'd offer me things I've never even heard of. It's rubbish. What's different is a word I've used already a couple of times. It's a word you hear from real people and from people in the media and from friends in the pub and colleagues at work and people on the train. It's creepy. What does it mean? Anyone read Anathem by Neil Stephenson? Couple of you. It's good. If you like Stevenson, he actually knows how to write endings now. There's a bloke in there, and he asks for a definition of the word creepy, and his definition of it is an intuition of the numinous combined with a sense of dread. Now, this is the truth, but no one understands what it means. The guy in the book was 400 years old, though. Maybe we can do better. It's about aggregation. It's about emergent phenomena. The whole goal of data science is to get a big pile of facts and then deduce from that new fact that you weren't told. That's what it's for. That's exactly what Target did. It's exactly what Sherlock Holmes does, right? You take data and you derive from it new and surprising conclusions. It's fun to watch if it's happening to someone else.
When I met you for the first time yesterday, I said Afghanistan or Iraq. You looked surprised.
Yes, how did you know?
I didn't know, I saw. But no tan above the wrists. You've been abroad but not sunbathing. Then there's your brother. Your phone, it's expensive, email-enabled MP3 player. Are you looking for a flat share? You wouldn't waste money on this, it's a gift then.
Not your father, this is a young man's gadget. Could be a cousin, but you're a war hero who can't find a place to live.
It says you've got problems with him. Maybe you liked his wife, maybe you don't like his drinking.
How can you possibly know about the drinking?
Every night he goes to plug it in to charge, but his hands are shaking.
You never see those marks on the sober man's phone, never see a drunk's without them.
That was amazing.
You think so?
Of course it was. It was extraordinary. It was quite extraordinary.
It's not what people normally say.
What do people normally say?
Piss off.
This is not the face of someone who was pleased and delighted by their user experience. People do not like it when you do this. Companies learn this. Your data collection is creepy when you use it to deduce things you weren't told and that you shouldn't know. Now, this is what data science is for. So there's a mismatch here, right? And it's not like it's new. Supermarkets, for example, are laid out according to an incredibly precise set of planning rules. And supermarket planners know this stuff. You have vegetables near the beginning because fresh produce communicates that all the produce in the store is fresh. You've got a bakery somewhere near the beginning of the store because it smells nice. Basically, pulls people in the door, gives you a sense of, that smells lovely. All the stuff you actually need to buy ends up at the back of the store, so you have to walk through everything else to get to it. It's the same reason why the only exit from the airport is through the duty-free shop. Every aspect of a store's layout is designed to stimulate shopping serendipity. So people find this whole experience weird and unpleasant. And the worst thing is they're helpless because they're trapped because there's nowhere else to go. There are a bunch of stock answers for what you should do about this. If you complain, you're told, here is the solution for you. None of them work. You can't opt out. You can't just opt out by not using any of this stuff at all. It's not realistic. It's not impossible. In the same way that you could avoid all this problem by going and living in a cave in the desert if you want to. But anyone who's actually advocating that as a serious solution to your problems, shut off. We're all part person and we're part machine now, honestly. But the point is that that's okay. We're now in a world where you'll never be lost again. Someone growing up now won't know the experience of being lost. Every horror film now needs 5 minutes at the beginning for some bobbins excuse about why no one's mobile phone works. You can listen to any music you want from all of history, maybe not this guy. You can video call people on the other side of the world. Louis XIV couldn't do any of this. These are superpowers that we've got. And we shouldn't have to be forced to give them up. We shouldn't be forced to trade them away to avoid people being creepy at us. If you leave your phone behind, it's like missing limb syndrome. You can't regulate this problem away. Now, the EU have done some work on this, and they've shown some willingness to stand up to this kind of data collection and provide privacy protections for us. India and the Indian Supreme Court have declared that privacy is a fundamental human right. Government regulation is important and it is needed and it is a part of the solution. But frankly, it moves too slow and it's too easy to stay ahead by just doing the thing which they're about to make illegal until they make it illegal and then move on to the next thing. And depending on how cynical you feel about government, it's also quite hard to get some of these large multi-billion dollar, multi-trillion dollar businesses regulated. John Stuart Mill, famous political philosopher, he wrote lots and lots of stuff about free speech. But one of the big things he said has been forgotten, which is that the laws passed by governments are about the 90th most important restriction on your freedom of speech. The American people tend to make a very big deal about their First Amendment, correctly make a very big deal about this. Non-Americans, people outside America also often make quite a big deal about the First Amendment and then are unpleasantly surprised to discover that they don't have one. Government regulation is a part of the answer, but it's only a part of the answer and it can't be the lead part. You can't just shout at people until they listen. Don't have a go at people about this who don't grasp it yet, who don't understand it yet. It just annoys your friends, right? A handsome ginger friend of mine had a go at all of his friends about this. And what happens is you drop off the cliff into the sea of people who can be ignored forever because you're just that bloke who goes on and on and on about privacy all the time. What we need to do is move the Overton window first. Sarah Mai said exactly this about Mozilla. You know, Mozilla knows privacy's never been a selling point for software ever, and it isn't. Not yet. If you say to people, come use this messaging service, right? None of your friends are on it, but you can bathe in the security and the rightness of the fact that you're doing the right thing, doesn't work. The tweet is right. Right now, people don't know to care. They don't know how to care about this, what they should do. And you can't get a new public who do care either. You can't reboot the public and make everyone care. Terry Pratchett wrote, the children of the revolution were faced with the age-old problem. It wasn't you had the wrong type of government, which was obvious, but that you had the wrong kind of people. This is wrong thinking. You are not allowed to think like this. And that was Pratchett's point, obviously, that you can't do this. More than 70% of people will reveal their password in exchange for a bar of chocolate. Anybody? Now, chap down here says his password is admin, and I anticipated someone might give me a fake password, so I Googled for fake chocolate bar and found a bunch of websites saying you can have these things, and they're just as nice as chocolate, and they're just as satisfying, and they're just as delicious, so here's a carrot for you. This is mine. And here's the thing, right? Here's the bad news. Technology is not the fix either. The fix is not technology. The tech isn't the hard bit. There's loads of tech to do this. You've got Signal, and you've got Matrix, and you've got Purism making phones, and you've got Privacy Badger from the EFF, and you've got VPNs by the dozen, and you've got password managers by the score, and you've got Tor, and you've got whatever your favorite security software is. What we've got is a chilling effect. People are frightened of what might happen with their data because they don't know. They can't anticipate what people are going to do. They just know it's going to be surprising and probably unpleasant. So all people can do is imagine what might happen, and then they're frightened of it. There's a reasonably common way of painting people who worry about this as they're worried because they're trying to conceal illegal activity or something like that. But it's not about that. It's not about imprisonment. It's not about illegality. It's about your rep. People fear the unknown, what might happen with this stuff, and they're right to do so. And that's what a chilling effect is. It's where there isn't a law against this. It's not prohibited, but everyone's discouraged anyway. Freedoms aren't being taken away. We're just afraid to use them. Say the social calling people, and they're right. If you feel you're being watched, you change your behaviour. Ideally, people really would dance like nobody's watching, but hardly anyone ever actually does. But everyone's still involved, everyone still participates because they've got no choice. Right? But what if there were a choice and people knew it? Whoever gets this right, whoever works out how to tell this story, to explain to people we can do better, it is possible to build a world where you don't have to feel like this. Whoever works out how to tell that story will define the next 10 years of technology. Mobile came about. It changed everything. Changed the world. It put power in our hands. Made billionaires. It made industries. Everything old was suddenly new again. And suddenly you had to look at everything through the lens of mobile. Social networking changed everything. Changed the world. It put power in our hands. It made billionaires. It made industries. Everything old was new again. Looked at everything through the lens of social. Go back in time and see Morpheus on his Nokia phone and tell him 10 years from now, everything will be mobile. Everything will be mobile. Go back in time a bit further, tell users on 6 Degrees. Anyone remember 6 Degrees other than me? Literally just me, first social network. It was a long time ago. Go back and tell them this thing that you're creating now, 10, 15 years from now, everything will be social. It'll elect presidents. Then go forward. Go forward to a world 10, 15, 20 years from now, a world in which your data is still yours, but everything we've got still works. And tell them there was a time when we felt like we were obliged to give all that up, that we had to trade that away. And they'll laugh at you. And they'll ask you where your pennyfarthing is. People want this fixed. 82% of people aren't comfortable with their data being sold in exchange for speed or convenience, whatever. Half of all people have avoided doing at least something, some basic thing online, because they're frightened of how their data will be used. Here, finally, is an industry that actually needs disrupting. There's a phrase, you build a better mousetrap, and the world will beat a path to your door. And if I could borrow the time machine that you had for a moment, I'd like to go back in time and pour a pot of coffee in Rolf Waldo Emerson's lap for saying this, because it's a pernicious lie. It leads people to believe that all you have to do is get the tech right and everything else just falls into place. And it isn't the case. There are, according to Wikipedia, 4,400 patents for mousetraps. 4,399 of them presumably thought they were building a better mousetrap. Anyone name a mousetrap inventor? I'm not sure Tom from Tom and Jerry is the guy you want to pick at being good at trapping mice, right? Maybe I missed the cartoon, but that was good. The way you overcome an incumbent business is by doing battle on a field they cannot compete on. Not that they won't or they don't, they can't. Apple, look at Microsoft's absurd domination of the desktop world, 95, 90%, and fought against it for years and years and years and years and years. Didn't get anywhere. So what they do? Invent a new platform where Microsoft don't have an entrenched advantage. Invent mobile and go to there. Because it's really hard to beat an entrenched advantage. Microsoft themselves, right? How do they beat the mainframe world? By telling people the thing you want is a computer on every desktop, not a terminal which talks to the big piece of iron in the basement. They invented a new platform on which everyone got to start from scratch. You build a world in which the current incumbents can't compete. And one way of doing that, if everyone's doing things which are creepy, is do a thing where creepiness isn't possible. Facebook, but where everyone's data is private, can't exist. It doesn't make any sense, right? And that's how you win. And the beauty of this is it's a weapon which only hurts bad people, right? If you're providing a service and people like it and it's good, but you're also doing weird, creepy things with their data, you can just stop doing that and you've still got a good service. So you're great. And when people say, I don't like this thing that you're doing with data, you go, okay, we won't do that, but you still like the thing that we provide. Now, if your business model is critically reliant on exploiting people's data in a way they don't like, then you lose, but whatevs. Not bothered. But the point is that real people want this. This is a real live conversation out there in the world. It's not just, me, not just us. Actual real people are constantly really worried about this. The Daily Mash tell jokes about privacy, right? Everyone finds this stuff unnerving. Facebook do weird things with your data is a mainstream thing to think. Tinfoil hats are now a fashion item. The world is ready to be convinced. They're eager to be convinced. So how do we do it? Don't know. I wish I had an easy, glib answer, and I don't. There are some interesting approaches. One of them is a thing called differential privacy, something that Apple talked about last year. And it's got it there. The idea is, here, you want to derive aggregate information. You've got a big pile of data, and you want to find out things about that, but you want to set things up so you can't tell any one specific answer, and you can't tell whether any individual person specifically participated. So you can't use it to target someone. Right? Now, I'm going to give an explanation here, but this is the Jackanory description of differential privacy. Don't go and try this on the Cypherpunks mailing list or anything. But imagine, I want to know how many people at Hackference like chocolate. So I say to you, well, here's the plan. I'll give you all a card. But no, I'll put your hand up. It's mine, I tell you. You can't have it. I say to you, okay, I'll give you all a card which says yes and a card which says no. And I say, here's the deal. You flip a coin, and if the coin comes up heads, then you answer correctly. You put your correct answer in the box. So I like chocolate, so yes goes in the box. If the coin comes up tails, then you flip another coin, and if that one comes up heads, you put yes in the box, regardless of your opinion. If that coin comes up tails, you put no in the box, regardless of your opinion. So, the way this works, we have our 4 players, Alice, Bob, Cantrice, and Dash. And Alice and Bob like chocolate, Cantrice and Dash don't. So, Alice flips a coin, gets heads. So, she answers correctly, puts a yes in the box. Bob flips a coin, gets tails. So he flips a second coin, gets tails again, and therefore he puts no, regardless of his opinion, he puts no in the box. Cantrice flips a coin and gets heads, so she tells the truth, puts a no in the box because she doesn't like chocolate. Dash flips a coin, gets tails, flips a coin and gets heads, so he says yes, regardless of his opinion. And if you look at that, there were 2 people who liked it and 2 people who didn't. And our answer, 2 people liked it and 2 people didn't. We've got aggregate information, but any individual person's answer is not reliable. Now, there are those of you who actually know about the maths who are like, dude, you can't do that. It doesn't work like that. And you're not wrong. That was the rigged demo to end all rigged demos, right? But this does actually work. The maths you need to do is quite a lot more complicated than what I just showed. But essentially what you're doing is you're adding noise to everyone's answer. Enough inaccuracy that you can't rely on any one individual answer, but the aggregate properties are all still the same. The thing I demonstrated there is not even from the differential privacy paper. The big differential privacy paper was from Dwork and a few other people. There's a link in the slides. But the thing I mentioned there is called the randomized response mechanism. It was invented in the 60s. So you could do surveys and ask people questions about embarrassing or illegal behavior and still get answers without necessarily requiring people to incriminate themselves. And the values are still okay. The state of the art is way more complicated than what I've described and way more subtle, and if you're into the maths, read the paper, it's really interesting. But the point is that this works, right? You can do data science and get this information without being creepy about it, without requiring people to expose all this information in a way that you can then exploit later. This is known technology. The methods of how to do this already exist, but people don't know that this is possible. They don't have to understand the maths. I don't understand the maths. But knowing that it's even possible to do this is the thing that we don't know how to do. We don't know how to explain to people that it's okay, that you can do this. It is possible to build a world in which you will never be lost, and in which you can listen to any music you want, and you can video chat to people on the other side of the world, and you don't feel uncomfortable about it. Because it's not okay that you're made to feel uncomfortable when interacting with these things. It is possible for there to be alternatives. Someone rooting around your life is not a price that you should feel that you have to pay. But what we need to work out how to do is how to explain that to people so they understand. Everyone's been presented with a false dilemma. You've got 2 choices. You can either opt out of everything, sacrifice all your superpowers, or you can have all this stuff and give up all your personal information and we can do whatever we like with it and there's nothing you can do about it. And those are your only two choices. That's how the public conversation is currently framed. So you literally haven't got an option. If you give us this stuff, we can do what we want. That's the deal. Sorry. If you don't like it, cave. That's your only option. And what we need to do is change that story. And this is the bit I don't know how to do. And I want us to talk about it. I want us to talk about how we can help people to understand that it doesn't have to be like this. It's on us. These ideas, these alternatives, the next big system, the next big startup, they'll come from us. People in this room, people in rooms like this. Who's building the next company? We are. But when you build it, talk about how we change the story, because people are scared, and they shouldn't have to be. When you're hacking or making companies or chatting, talk about how we change that story. User experience, this is something Florence said earlier, that user experience is the whole thing. It's not just about how rounded the corners on your buttons are, right? It's the experience of the whole thing, and part of that is the view of the world that you're putting across. So don't just think about, we'll collect this data, we promise we won't use it. Talk about not only we won't collect that data and do what we want anyway, talk about how we convince people that's the right thing to do. That's what they should expect. That's what they should demand. That's what should be normal. Because the world we've got, people don't like it, but they don't know it can be better, and we need to explain it. We can't tell people to opt out. We can't shout at them all the time. We can't wait for government to save us. We can't wait for everyone to learn spontaneously. We need to explain. We need to teach. It's obvious to us. You'll put your hands up at the beginning. It's obvious to us. How do we make it obvious to everyone else? And then one day, what happens is the world changes. That everyone thinks of this stuff as their birthright, as a matter of course. You start up a new company and say, we're going to collect all your data and do this, and people go, what, that's weird. They don't say, oh, I suppose you're just like everyone else. They say, that's strange. Why would we do that? And then you stop doing it. That's when the seesaw tips, when the world changes as a matter of course. I want to talk about how we change the story. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions, but I might not have any answers, and I'm keeping you all from the after party. Password? I haven't got a second carrot. It's got 0 instead of an O. I haven't got a second carrot, I'm afraid. Question about.
How can this form of obfuscation, I forgot what you call it, deal with recommendations, right? You can't have the recommendation system with things like this. And also, a lot of companies, businesses work on the promise of recommendations, making people buy more stuff. We live in a commercialistic society. You can't change this stuff without changing the whole society.
So the question is, how do you deal with things like recommendations and so on? And it's a very good point, and I don't know.
Yeah.
There are, the point is, at least partially, that I didn't know differential privacy existed either. I would have assumed, until I found out about this stuff, that your option is you give people the data and then they can do things with it, and all you can do is just hope that they only do the stuff they say, and that's it. But a certain amount of academic research goes into this, and they say, no, you can actually do differently. And I stood back and went, really? That's great. And I do not know if there is a way to handle things like recommendations of what your next Amazon purchase or your next Netflix purchase should be, while not collecting all the data about you specifically, which can then be used later on to target you. I don't know. But I suspect there are a bunch of people working on this, doing academic research on this, who do know, or could find ways if we look into it. But yeah, and it may be a case where, imagine a world in which 15 years from now, almost no one does this, and then someone says, okay, we'd like to offer recommendations as a service, in exchange for which you have to give us all this stuff and we can then know exactly what you want you specifically. We'd then be in a much different position, to what we are now, when it's perfectly normal to offer that choice and everyone just goes, well, I haven't really got any choice, have I? Because there is no alternative. In a world in which people understand that there is a third way, that doing that stuff is not normal, then maybe the decision would go a different way. Another question.
When or the pivot point happens where people in charge of companies like Google, Facebook, companies that collect this data, at what point do they go, we want to provide this service to people, but to maintain it, we have to give up people's privacy, and that's something that we as users of our own service are fine with doing. Why would people, real people, go, we are aware of giving up people's privacy and selling data to provide them this service?
So when does the tipping point come when the people who run Google and Facebook and so on make the decision to say, we'll compromise this? I'm not sure. I did say I probably wouldn't be able to answer any of the questions. I'm not sure where that tipping point comes. But again, I think a lot of this is shaped by the zeitgeist, the paradigm, right? Where it's just currently a normal thing to think. So there's not really much of a determination going on. Inside a lot of these companies, there are serious, proper discussions about this. I don't want to paint everyone as, you know, Dracula, who's deliberately sitting there twirling their moustaches while tying people to the railroad tracks and thinking up ways to exploit your data because it annoys you. That's not why people do this. But the determination currently is very much on the side of there's literally no negative cost to doing this because everyone has to put up with it anyway. So, again, I think that would be shaped a lot more by if there was somewhere else you could go and a load of people left, then I suspect a lot of those decisions would get revisited. But that's guesswork. Someone wants to put me in charge of Google, that would be great. For like 5 minutes would be enough and then I could retire. Any other question there?
So, obviously we're all used to scrolling through pages of terms and conditions of privacy statements and stuff like this to get to the bottom of the bottom.
You mean reading every word, right?
Yeah. And obviously, so part of it is that we actually don't have a clue what these companies are doing because we haven't digested all that information even if we have read it. In other sectors, you get kind of voluntary quality standards. So you might see something like organic food with a stamp, lion eggs, things like that. Cruelty-free makeup, and people can make an informed choice with a stamp or something like that. And it's voluntary, right? But some people will use that. Is there anything like that in the space, or do you think there's space for that? Is that part of the picture?
So, question about voluntary external assessment of companies. So, like you said, lion eggs is a voluntary external thing. The important point about the lion eggs thing is the person in charge of the hen house is not the fox. Right? At the moment, it would be hard to get... There is no tech industry in the sense that they could get together and regulate themselves. You know, it doesn't really work like that because you've got a bunch of hugely separate areas. There are certainly a whole bunch of external organisations who will review this kind of thing, but most people aren't paying attention, and in general, they skew very, very much towards the everything you do is terrible end of the world. So the quality mark ends up being these people are terrible, and so are these people, and these people, and these people, and these people. There's a thing called TOSDR. It stands for Terms of Service Didn't Read. It's a Chrome extension thing, I think, and a Firefox plugin and so on. And if you go to a website where they've reviewed and assessed that company's terms of service, they'll give you a little rating for it, because no one reads the terms of service, right? And I don't believe I've ever gone to any even vaguely seriously sized money-making company where the TOSDR thing says anything other than, F. Which is... And people have a right to make money and so on. Places, things like TOSDR tend to be very, very harsh on anything. But the other problem is that the terms of service very, very rarely lists all the stuff you're going to do, because the whole point, as I said, the whole point of data science is to look at this stuff and derive new and surprising conclusions. If they knew what all the conclusions were already, they wouldn't be surprising. Which means that what it says in the terms of service is we may look at your data and derive new and surprising conclusions. At which point your option is either to opt out entirely or to embrace it entirely. So I'm not sure if any kind of sensible rather than condemnatory external thing could even exist.
I guess I was thinking more in terms of the sort of differential privacy thing. So if we had a good suite of things like that, where we knew that they could still extract value, but there were things like that in place.
Right, yes. So the question is things like the differential privacy stuff. If we've got a good suite of those and we can extract it, you could then say, yes, you're using this technique, which is good, and you're using this technique, which is not good. And I think this is why Apple started talking about differential privacy last year. Because unlike almost every other major technical company, Apple don't need to monetize your data because they've monetized your money already. Plus, they're hopelessly bad at services, by comparison with others, brilliant at hardware. So they can afford to talk about this kind of thing as a selling point. They can absolutely battle Google and Facebook and other huge companies on a battlefield they're not ready to compete on. Because Apple can say, we do this thing, you could go ahead and do this, Facebook, but if Facebook was all differential privacy, it wouldn't work. They're attempting to fight on a ground which cannot be competed on without fundamentally changing the business model, which is, I think, why they're doing exactly that. And having Apple lead the charge for this is good, second biggest company in the world and all that. How many of you are iPhone users? About half, if I were to guess? Yeah, about half, a bit less. So if you've got a company like that leading the charge, then it's absolutely marvelous to see that, because then other people will start saying, hey, but I want that, that seems sensible. I feel more protected, I feel less nervous, I feel less like I might be exploited, less like this is creepy. And Apple can afford to trade on that, because they weren't going to do anything hugely complicated with your data anyway, because that's not what they rely on. They've already got the £1,000 you spent on your iPhone X. So, anything else? Oh, one more here.
Do you feel that there's like an almost intrinsic trade-off between these creepy things and convenience to users?
Do I feel there's a trade-off between creepy things and convenience to users? Absolutely, yes, I do. And I'm painting this very much as you can either do creepy things or you can be fine, and that's the option. And exactly as with the recommendations question, there are things where perhaps you can't do it in a world in which you can't build a world at all in which we can give you really brilliant recommendations of films without finding out which films you've watched in any sensible way. That may not be possible. At the moment, I think the atmosphere is not right for people to make an informed decision about this, because it's not that they can go, fine, I'll go to no recommendations Netflix instead. But yes, there is a trade-off. It's never gonna be perfect, but I like things which put the power, the decision, in our hands rather than the others. Call me an old socialist, I don't know. How long have I got? Am I just about to be thrown off the stage?
I think you're about to be thrown.
Got one of the shepherd's crook things. Sorry, I just kept going. So if you've got other questions, sorry, catch up with me afterwards, a beer or something.
Yeah, the conference will go on for around 5 minutes or so. Are you joining us at the pub later on?
I'm happy to drop by the pub.
Yeah, and otherwise at the pub.
It's unusual for me. But
The after party is like your flat out around the corner.
the after party is not in my flat.
Big round of applause for Stuart.